Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. There comes a moment in your life when you get tired of being everybody's doormat, everybody's sounding board, everybody's target. You get tired of being the strong one for everybody else while you're bleeding quietly in the background. You get tired of bending and breaking, all for people who wouldn't even lean for you, much less break. But here's the truth, and it might sting a little. People will only treat you how you let them. I know that might sound harsh. I know that sounds like it's all on you, but baby, it's not. Blame, it's power. You can't control what they say, what they do, how they roll their eyes when you walk in the room, but you can control what gets access to your spirit, what gets permission to sit in your heart. You can't change toxic people, but you sure can starve them of the oxygen they need to live in your life. The enemy doesn't always come dressed in red with horns. Sometimes it shows up smiling, laughing, clapping for you in public, and secretly hoping you fall in private. Sometimes it shows up needing a little help, needing a listening ear, needing one more favor. And you're soft-hearted. You're loyal. You love hard even when it hurts. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-betrayal. There's one move, just one, that'll shift everything. And I don't mean for a day, I mean for good. You've got to stop giving toxic people an all-access pass to a soul that's under renovation. You hear me? You're healing. You're evolving. And baby, evolution doesn't need permission. You don't owe anybody an explanation for protecting your peace. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing silence over chaos. When you start walking different, talking different, glowing different, they're going to notice. And not all of them are going to like it. But your assignment was never to be liked. Your assignment is to live free. Free from manipulation, free from guilt, free from the cycle of shrinking yourself to make other people feel tall. That cycle, that ends the moment you say no and mean it. That ends when you stop picking up the phone for people who only ever call when they need something. That ends when you stop showing up for folks who wouldn't flinch if you disappeared. You think setting a boundary makes you mean? No, honey, it makes you wise. It means you finally realize that not everyone who comes close deserves to stay close. You don't throw pearls to pigs. You don't light yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are not a convenience. You are not a second choice. You are not a sponge for other people's mess. And let me talk to the part of you that's scared, that thinks if you cut them off, you'll be alone. Can I tell you something? There is holy peace in solitude. There is clarity and quiet. And when you stop letting the wrong people in, God can send the right ones. The ones who speak life, who cover you in prayer, not in gossip, who call out your greatness without competing with it. But you can't receive what's divine if your arms are full of dysfunction. You can't step into your purpose while holding hands with people who are dragging you backwards. It's time. Time to stop entertaining conversations that leave you heavy. Stop accepting invitations to places where your soul doesn't feel safe. You don't need to respond to every text. You don't need to defend your choices. Maturity is moving in silence and letting the results speak. They're going to say you switched up. Let them. Say you got distance. Let them. Say you're doing too much. Baby, you're doing what you should have done a long time ago. You're healing. You're protecting what's sacred. You're reclaiming your power. That's not too much. That's divine alignment. And when they realize they can no longer manipulate you, no longer guilt you, no longer reel you back in with drama and fake apologies, they'll panic. But don't let that shake you. That panic that the cycle is breaking. The spell is breaking. And your freedom is closer than you think. You see, the moment you decide you're done is the moment everything begins to shift. But you got to mean it. You got to walk away without turning back. You got to stop hoping they'll change and start changing you, because the most powerful thing you can do is not scream, not argue, not beg. Just stop showing up. Stop replying. Stop performing. Silence is louder than any speech. And baby, your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. So, let them think what they want. Let them twist the story. Let them call you bitter. You're not bitter. You're better. You're bolder. You're wiser. You're not cold. You're clear. Clear on who you are, what you deserve, and what you will no longer tolerate. Don't wait on closure. Don't wait on an apology. Don't wait on them to see your worth. You already know your worth, and it's not up for debate. The moment you choose peace over people-pleasing, healing over chaos, growth over comfort, everything changes. You change, you rise, you flourish. So today, do this one thing. Close the door. Not halfway, not with a little crack left open for them to crawl back in. Shut it, lock it, throw away the key, and then walk in the direction of your purpose with your head high, your heart guarded, and your spirit ready. Because baby, once you stop dancing for people who never learned your rhythm, the music changes. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of clarity, of courage, of finally saying, I matter too. When you stop giving toxic people access to your life, everything in your atmosphere begins to shift. And not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a Band-Aid. You stopped being the soft place for chaos to land. And that's the beginning of your freedom. Some of us grew up thinking that love meant endurance, that to prove our loyalty we had to stay longer, stretch wider, hold heavier. We believed the more we suffered, the more worthy we became. But that's not love, baby. That's codependency dressed up in devotion. And the moment you realize you've been loving people at the expense of yourself is the moment you also realize something's got to change. That change begins the second you decide to no longer be available for dysfunction. Toxic people don't always look toxic. Sometimes they come with charm, with history, with shared laughs and deep roots. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes they're the people you thought would be standing at your wedding or holding your baby or cheering at your success. But history is not a hall pass for mistreatment. Blood is not a reason to keep handing over pieces of your sanity. And when the same person keeps draining you, belittling you, betraying you, it's not just a mistake anymore. It's a pattern. A pattern you have the power to interrupt. You see, people feed off your reactions. Every time you respond to their trauma, every time you pick up that call knowing it's going to leave you heavy, every time you explain your boundaries to someone who doesn't respect them, you teach them how to treat you. You teach them that your line is flexible, your peace negotiable. But when you go silent, when you stop showing up, when you remove access without a dramatic exit, without a monologue, without begging to be seen or heard or valued, that's when the power starts returning to your hands. And no, it doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you're bitter. It means you've matured enough to realize you don't have to attend every emotional fire someone set. You don't have to keep reopening wounds just because someone else refuses to heal. You don't have to make space at your table for people who brought knives the last time they ate with you. There will be people who call you selfish for protecting your peace, Let them. There will be people who paint you as the villain because you stop letting them drain you. Let them. You're not here to manage their feelings. You're here to steward your soul. And stewardship means learning how to say no without apology. It means no longer explaining your silence to people who were loud in their disrespect. It means choosing peace even when chaos is knocking hard and loud and persistent. Setting boundaries doesn't make you hard. It makes you whole. Because every time you choose yourself, a piece of your spirit returns. Every time you choose not to engage in the same cycle, not to re-enter the same argument, not to prove your worth to someone blind to it, you reclaim your energy. And energy is sacred. You can't keep pouring into people and places that leave you empty. Your peace is not a community project. It's a personal mission. And the more you honor it, the more your life will reflect that honor. Boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're gates to keep toxicity from getting in. And only you hold the key. You decide who gets to come close. You decide what conversations you'll entertain. You decide what behaviors you'll accept. It's not your job to fix people. It's not your job to carry their weight while neglecting your own. You're allowed to say, this is not for me anymore. You're allowed to walk away from tables where you're only fed crumbs. You're allowed to outgrow spaces that once felt like home. Don't let guilt trick you into staying small. Don't let loyalty become your cage. There's a difference between forgiveness and access. You can release someone from your heart without keeping them in your life. You can love from a distance. You can wish someone well and still protect your peace. Not everyone deserves front row access to your journey. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone go, not to punish them, but to preserve you, because you've got dreams to chase, healing to embrace, joy to reclaim, and you can't do that when you're constantly tangled up in someone else's storm. Your purpose requires clarity, and clarity requires quiet. You can't hear God. You can't hear your intuition. You can't hear your healing whisper to you when you're always caught up in someone else's chaos. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. You're going to second guess yourself. You're going to wonder if maybe you overreacted, if maybe you should have just tried one more time. That's the pull of old patterns. But this time you're not going back. This time you're choosing you. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if your heart breaks, because the price of peace is often the discomfort of letting go. Some of the people who belong in your life will respect your boundaries. They won't guilt you, won't manipulate you, won't test your limits to see how far they can push. They'll honor your growth. They'll clap for your healing. They'll love you in a way that doesn't hurt. And when you stop making room for toxic people, you make room for those people. Choosing yourself without guilt is one of the most powerful, most freeing, and most misunderstood acts you will ever commit to. For so long we were taught that choosing ourselves is selfish, that putting our needs first somehow makes us bad, cold, or heartless. But let me ask you this. Who's going to take care of your spirit if you don't? Who's going to guard your mind, your peace, your energy, if not you? Because here's the truth. Nobody is coming to save you from burnout, from emotional exhaustion, from the weight of always being available to everyone but yourself. We carry guilt because we were conditioned to believe that sacrifice is love, that if we're not hurting, we're not doing enough, that if we set a boundary and someone is disappointed, we failed. But that's not love. That's not grace. That's bondage disguised as duty. You can love people and still choose yourself. You can be compassionate and still walk away. And the moment you stop apologizing for doing what's best for your soul is the moment you take your power back. There's a certain type of freedom that comes when you stop managing the image and start honoring the truth. When you no longer feel the need to look perfect to be worthy. When you no longer filter your journey to make it palatable. Healing loudly means you're done with pretending, done with making yourself small, done with hiding your brilliance because someone else was intimidated by your process. The truth is, your journey is beautiful, even the ugly parts, even the crying on the bathroom floor parts, even the sleepless nights and the therapy sessions and the journal pages filled with questions. All of it matters. All of it counts. You don't need a perfect past to be powerful. You don't need a smooth story to have a voice. Your mistakes don't cancel your mission. Your detours don't erase your destiny. Healing loudly reminds you that you're still worthy even if you're still healing. You don't have to wait to feel whole to move forward. You just need to trust that every step, no matter how wobbly, is proof that you're not stuck, that you're not finished, that your story didn't end where the pain began. Healing loudly is not about getting revenge or proving people wrong. It's about choosing yourself every single day in a world that keeps trying to erase your identity. It's waking up and deciding that your peace is a priority. Your voice deserves to be heard and your presence has purpose. You don't have to yell to be heard, but you do have to stop whispering when your soul is ready to shout. You've been quiet long enough. You've been overlooked, underestimated, and overworked trying to prove you were okay. Now it's time to live like you believe your healing matters. The people who really love you will honor your healing. They won't rush you. They won't shame you. They won't guilt you into pretending. They'll hold space. They'll walk with you. They'll understand that healing is not linear and that some days are brighter than others. And if people fall away in this process, let them. Let them go if they only knew how to love the unhealed version of you. Let them walk if your growth makes them uncomfortable. Healing loudly means you're no longer available for relationships that only thrive when you're dimmed. Sometimes healing loudly looks like smiling again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you fought hard for that smile. Sometimes it looks like telling someone I'm not okay and being okay with saying it. Sometimes it looks like being honest about what you need, about what broke you, about what helped you recover. There's so much power in your vulnerability. Your strength is not in how little you show, but in how boldly you live in your truth. There's something sacred about a woman who can say, this hurt me, but it didn't stop me. It shook me, but it didn't end me. When you heal loudly, you become a lighthouse for others still trying to find their way through the dark. You don't have to have it all figured out to be a guide. You just have to be willing to share your light. Even if it flickers sometimes, even if it's not as bright as it used to be, your light is still light. And somebody needs it. Somebody is waiting to see someone just like you rise, so they know they can see. That's the beauty of healing out loud. It breaks the lie that you have to suffer in silence. It breaks the illusion that you're the only one struggling. It opens the door for connection, for compassion, for collective healing. You're allowed to take your time. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to fall apart and start over. But don't you dare believe that healing quietly is the only acceptable way to heal. There is power in your presence. There is purpose in your process, in every step you take, every truth you tell, every tear you shed and still show up afterward. That's a loud declaration that healing is happening. So when you feel tempted to hide, when you feel like your story is too messy, when you hear that voice telling you to wait until you're better before you speak, pause and remember, you don't need to be finished to be faithful. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be real. You just need to be present. You just need to keep going. Because healing, when done loudly, has the power not just to change your life, but to set others free in the process. Healing is often painted as this sweet, peaceful journey where everything falls into place and the sun starts shining again. But the truth is, real healing is gritty, it's raw, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't always look like soft music and bubble baths. It looks like facing yourself in the mirror with tears in your eyes, choosing to stay in the room with the parts of yourself you used to run from. Healing is not always calm. Sometimes it's chaotic. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it's silent. But more than anything, healing is a decision, a daily one, a decision to show up for yourself even when the world didn't. A decision to believe that the pain you experience isn't the end of your story. A decision to walk through the fire and trust that you won't come out burned. You'll come out refined. There are parts of you that have been waiting for you to choose them again. Waiting for you to say, I see you. I hear you. I haven't forgotten what you went through. But I also won't let you live there anymore. That's what healing does. It calls those parts of you back from the places where they've been frozen in survival mode. It invites them to breathe again, to feel again, to trust again. But that invitation isn't always easy to accept, because when you start to heal, everything that's been buried starts to surface. The conversations you never had, the grief you never processed, the betrayal you never admitted to yourself. And it can feel like breaking before it feels like becoming. But breaking is sometimes the only way light gets in. Healing is not just about getting over something, it's about getting through it. It's about doing the messy, sacred work of feeling what you tried not to feel for so long. It's about unlearning the habits you picked up when you were just trying to survive. The perfectionism, the people-pleasing, the emotional detachment, the control. All of those were strategies your younger self developed to cope. They are not your truth, and healing means learning how to live without needing them anymore. It means choosing authenticity over approval. It means learning how to stay with yourself even when it hurts. It means remembering that your story matters, and not just the highlight reel, but the hard parts too. There's a certain courage that healing demands, the courage to admit that you're not okay and still deserve love, the courage to set boundaries that disappoint other people but protect your peace, the courage to forgive yourself for what you did when you didn't know better. That kind of courage doesn't always feel like strength. Sometimes it feels like weakness. Like trembling hands and racing hearts and uncertain steps. That is courage nonetheless. And every time you choose to lean into the process instead of numbing out, you're rewriting your story in real time. Healing teaches you to honor your triggers, not as a sign that you're broken, but as messengers pointing to the places that need your tenderness. You don't need to get rid of them to be whole. You just need to listen to them, to understand where they came from, to sit with them long enough to ask, what are you trying to protect me from? Because sometimes the anger, the anxiety, the fear, it's not the enemy. It's a younger version of you trying to keep you safe. And healing means telling that younger version, thank you for protecting me, but I've got it from here. It means parenting yourself in ways you never received. It means giving yourself the compassion you never got. It means learning how to feel safe in your own body again. You don't have to rush your healing. You don't have to perform it. You don't have to package it up in a way that makes it easier for others to digest. Your healing is not a show. It's sacred. And just because it doesn't look like someone else's doesn't make it any less real. You might heal through prayer, through movement, through silence, through therapy, through tears, through community, through art, through solitude, through storytelling. There is no one way. There is just your way, and that way is valid. Some days healing looks like showing up with joy. Other days it looks like surviving the day. Both are worthy. Both are enough. You don't have to have it all together to be healing. You just have to be willing to stay in the process, to not give up on yourself, to believe that what's ahead is better than what's behind. That's not just hope, that's faith. And healing requires a kind of faith that's not rooted in everything being perfect, but in knowing that you are still being perfected, even in your imperfections. Healing also shifts your perspective. Where you used to see loss, you start to see release. Where you used to see failure, you start to see growth. Where you used to see rejection, you start to see redirection. Healing doesn't change the facts, but it transforms the meaning. It rewrites the narrative. It says, yes, that happened, but that's not where the story is. It gives you the authority to speak over your own life, to reclaim your voice, to choose what stays and what goes. And when you start to live from that place, you start to walk in a freedom that no one can take from you. The relationships that fall away during your healing aren't a loss, they're a clearing. The spaces that feel empty are being made ready for something greater. The loneliness you sometimes feel is not abandonment, it's an invitation to deeper connection with yourself. Healing makes you whole, not because you're never hurt again, but because you're no longer defined by the hurt, because you've made peace with your past, because you've allowed yourself to grieve, to feel, to process, to forgive, and from that place, you rise differently. There will be people who don't understand your healing, people who expect you to go back to who you were before, people who are uncomfortable with your growth because it reminds them of where they're still stuck. But your healing is not a threat, it's a testimony. And you don't need to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't need to delay your breakthrough to accommodate their fear. You are allowed to be whole in front of people who only knew your brokenness. You are allowed to be different. You are allowed to evolve. There's a beauty in becoming that only comes after breaking. There's a strength that only shows up after the storm. And when you finally look back and see how far you've come, you'll realize that every tear, every setback, every lonely night, it all mattered. It all worked together. You didn't just survive. You didn't just get by. You grew. You healed. You changed. You became. And that is the real miracle. Not that you escaped the fire, but that you walked through it and came out new. Healing is not a destination, it's a journey, often a lifelong one. It is messy, it is uncomfortable, and it is transformative. But most of all, it is yours. No one else can define how you heal or set the timeline for your restoration. As you let go of the toxic things in your life, as you embrace the power of your own truth, as you step into your purpose and learn to heal with authenticity and bravery, you will realize the strength that was always within you. You will heal the commitment you feel to the process. And as you live and grow, this will be a process that never ends. It will always unfold in authenticity and bravery. You will realize the strength that was always within you. And you will discover that healing is not about perfection, but about progress. It's about showing up for yourself each day, even when the process doesn't feel linear, even when it feels like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back.